So, video number 2, the male psyche as the cause of sexual violence. So I'm going to read to you a piece that I wrote. Everything you're about to hear are my words. This is my work. I wrote this as what's called an abstract for a large format platform speech that I have compiled about sexual assault and sexual harassment. And I think I did a really good job of writing the abstract, so I'm just going to read it to you. You'll see me look down away from the camera because I'm reading this boring piece of paper. Okay, so then afterwards we're going to digest it. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of it because I think I did some really good work here and I want to get the ball down the field on stopping sexual assault and all this madness. So here we go. Here's my abstract. The May 2014 Not All Men and Yes All Women Twitter conversations showed the propensity for men to distance themselves individually and collectively from rape and violence against women, as evidenced in the verbiage of thousands of male Twitter users. Most men compulsively reject any notion of accountability for their actions regarding sexual violence. The male compulsion to distance from rape, labeling it a women's problem, is in fact caused by the same factors that drive men to commit rape and violence against women. Current research in both male psychology and shame studies cite shame and self-loathing as the core polarizing elements in the male psyche. Yet these two factors remain absent from cultural conversations regarding sexual violence. Additionally, factors such as male codependence and masculine low self-esteem and self-loathing are missing from the dialogue. Open discussion of masculine shame and self-loathing as legitimate elements of the male psyche and the core causes of rape neutralize the compulsive distancing and establishes accountability for men in the cessation of sexual violence. A concise presentation of the psychological evidence for masculine shame, codependence, low self-esteem, and self-loathing as the causes of rape provide language to converse directly to the point in an informed manner. This allows us to start a frank and open public conversation for ending rape and sexual assault based on fact rather than the default pathology. So what is the default pathology? I brought it up in the first video, this notion of power and control. We keep saying, well, men commit rape and men commit sexual harassment in the workplace because of power and control. No, they don't. That's not it. That's why we can't seem to solve the problem. Why is it that we can't get any ground on this issue? Because we won't say exactly and factually what it is. This power and control thing is not accurate, so please stop saying it. What causes sexual assault, rape, sexual battery, and sexual harassment in the workplace is masculine shame, masculine self-loathing, codependence, and this reflexive deflection where they can get away from everything. The core drivers of the masculine psyche, meaning the most polarizing element of their psyche, core drivers are self-loathing and shame. That's pretty caustic stuff. So if we keep talking about power and control, we are never going to make a difference in this conversation. You can talk about it, till the end of time. It's not going to clear up the problem. We have to talk about men's shame. We have to talk about masculine self-loathing. Those are the drivers of it. So we've got to get that into the language if we're going to get any traction on the issue. We also need this statement I made about open discussion of masculine shame and self-loathing as legitimate elements of the male psyche. That is really important. Why shame is such a hot, it's hot, they got to get away from it. Why shame is such a problem is shame at its essence is like this mud bog or this quicksand that men are being pulled down into. So the entire time that they're having an internal experience of shame, They are desperately trying, they're clawing their way to get away from that. So every part of their psyche in that moment is turned toward get away from this. Nobody can act like an adult. Nobody can stay present. Nobody can add anything to the moment that is productive when they are engulfed in shame, when they are engulfed by their inner experience. So I have a lot of compassion for the fact that that's what they're going through in the moment. I just am no longer willing to pass over that that's what's happening. This is not about power and control. Power and control are what they try to use as tools to save them from the shame. But power and control are not what are driving rape. Rape is being driven by sexual assault and sexual harassment in the workplace is being driven by shame and self-loathing. Masculine self-loathing is a really big problem. And it is something that is so caustic and so incendiary that most men can't even say those words. It's rare when you hear an adult man who can say self-loathing. They just can't seem to get it out. So these two factors, shame and masculine self-loathing, are what we have to talk about. We have to get it on the table, and we have to give language to it so that men stop being excused from the table. Because every time we give them a hall pass to get up and just walk away from this, power and control, we give men another out to not stop and deal with their psyche. We have to deal with this. We have to talk about shame and self-loathing. Current research in both male psychology and shame studies cite shame and self-loathing as the core polarizing elements of the male psyche. Well, that's really important. I had a conversation with a gentleman who does work with an organization called the Mankind Project. And he doesn't teach their work, but he's done a lot of interaction with them. And he made an amazing statement to me during a discussion about this at one point. And he said, the biggest problem that the Mankind Project deals with in working with men is it's really, really hard to get men to admit they have a psyche. What? How can men not admit they have a psyche? That's a really important part of this. To most men, their inner world isn't their psyche. It isn't something they have ownership of. Their inner world just is. So in the past year, in dealing with the Me Too movement, a lot of noise has been made about this issue of male privilege and white male privilege. How I'm going to call that is this default setting that men have that says, I don't have a psyche, I just am and I'm right. Take that into account for a moment. If an adult male doesn't grasp that he has a psyche, does he have any accountability for doing anything about it? No. Yeah. So for any woman who's ever been mansplained before, how many of y'all are like, yes, I get this? Men don't get it, and that's the biggest problem. When you encounter men who truly don't believe they have a psyche, what that does is it gives them a hall pass on every single waking moment. They never are accountable for anything that they do. They're not accountable for any part of their lives, which is why so often they're dumping themselves in our laps, expecting free psychotherapy. Part of what goes on with these men who don't believe they have a psyche, they automatically distance themselves from everything uncomfortable. They also believe that women are accountable for their lives. So if you look at something like the men's rights movement, why so many of those guys come across as broken, passive, immature, disempowered, lacking agency is because they fundamentally believe that women have the control. That, the other side of that equal sign is they don't believe they have a psyche. So they don't have to do anything to work on their psyche, like grow their own character. It's kind of convenient, except that we as women pay all the price for it because they're the ones perpetrating all this nonsense. So we have to pin down this idea that yes, men, you do have a psyche and you're accountable for it. And We're willing to arm you with every piece of language you need to get traction on that issue, but we are no longer willing to be accountable for your psyche. You alone are accountable for your psyche. So, talking about masculine shame and talking about male self-loathing and grounding it in the sense that, yes, men, you do have a psyche, gets us to a place where we can allow men to breathe around this issue. Because right now, if they're just reflexively deflecting everything, they can't breathe around this issue. I don't condone it, but I at least have compassion for it. Because if they're trapped in their own inner workings with no idea that they have an inner workings, they can't get traction on anything. And I'm not willing to let that go on. That has got to come to a stop right now. So, giving language and defining these terms and then pinning it to the mat is going to get us forward on this issue with some maturity.